Hi, this is Joe Ziemba, and I host the podcast When Football Was Football here on the Sports History Network. I'm also the author of the recent book, Bears vs. Cardinals, the NFL's oldest rivalry. These two clubs first met in 1920 and will be renewing that rivalry again this year on December 24th in Chicago. In honor of that occasion, I'm very pleased to announce that the Sports History Network will be offering 2 free copies of my book to its listeners. To qualify for this great gridiron giveaway, just go to the link at sportshistorynetwork.com/Christmas 2023. That's sportshistorynetwork.com/Christmas 2023. Please enter by the closing date of December 15th so that we have enough time to contact you for a personal inscription of the book, and then ship the book to you for arrival prior to December 25th. And as always, thank you for listening to the Sports History Network, and good luck.
As the world teetered on the brink of global conflict in 1939, the American professional football season roared to life. While the headlines were dominated by the rising tide of fascism in Europe, on the gridiron, rivalries were renewed, legends were born, and the game continued to captivate a nation through innovation and some loss of some great figures. We're talking about the 1939 professional football season and Football History Rewind, part number 83, coming up in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with pigskindispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of pigskindispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history. And boy, we have a great show for you today. We are going to go back in time and talk about Football History Rewind, part number 83, and the 1939 professional football season. But before we do, let's just make sure you're aware we have our first book hit Amazon just a few weeks ago. It's titled The World's Greatest Pro Gridiron Team, the 1903 Franklin All-Stars, and boy, is it filled with history. It's one of these forgotten teams that can't believe anybody forgot about because they are truly a dominant team. You can find it at Amazon or on the front page of pigskindispatch.com or jerseydispatch.com. Now, there was more than just looming war that affected the game back in 1939. It was, remember, we're on the verge of World War II at the time. Longtime NFL President Joe Carr unexpectedly passed away in May of 1939, just 3 months after signing a new 10-year contract to lead the NFL. Now, Carr had been there since the beginning of the league, and in its second year, he became its president, taking over for Jim Thorpe, and he molded the fledgling organization as its architect of the initial reorganizing, as he nurtured growth, steered through controversies with discipline, and lasted rival leagues, and changed the course and the direction of the National Football League. Carl Stork, the former owner of the Dayton Triangles, and another founding owner, present at the beginning of the league, took over as Carr's successor. But it was hard to fill the shoes of a man who had done so much for the league. We have more on that story from a couple years ago when we got to talk to our friend Chris Willis of NFL Films, who did a biography on Joe Carr. Great book, and it's a great podcast episode. Go and check it out, pigskindispatch.com. The 1939 season was also an experiment in ways to get the NFL product out there into households across the land. Remember, college football is still king at that time. NFL and professional football are a very distant second in the eyes of football fans. So they ended up having a TV broadcast of a game in Albany, New York's audience. 1939. That's a long time ago. And it was the Albany area. It was a bold move by the NFL, and it's now known as the first broadcast of a National Football League game, as on October 22nd, the Brooklyn Dodgers defeated the Philadelphia Eagles 23-14 in a game played at Ebbets Field in Brooklyn. It was figured that Albany might have more television sets than any other place nearby, and it was an easy broadcast to get it up to Albany. That's why they chose that locale. Now, it may have not have been deemed a success then, but it helped pave the way for future considerations in television broadcasts of sporting events, which would turn the National Football League into the behemoth big business it is to us in modern times. Where would it be without football? That's where most of its revenue comes from. The regular broadcasts of games, though, would not occur for another 12 years in 1951, partly due to World War II sort of interrupting everything going on in the world, but it also brought in the technology needed to make television even better than it was back in 1939, just from some of the wartime developments of some technology. Now, the season was also filled with some innovative rules changes going into 1939. First of all, an illegal receiver touching a pass. Now, if an ineligible receiver touched a forward pass, it would result in a 15-yard penalty and a loss of down for the offense. This is a new concept in the NFL at the time. Also, if an ineligible receiver is downfield before the forward pass is thrown, the offense would be penalized 15 yards and loss a down at that time. So the illegal receiver downfield early is the name they were sort of nominating that. We know that ineligible downfield by today's standards and names. Now, if a kickoff went out of bounds after being touched only by the receiving team, they regained possession of the ball at the spot where it went out. The 1939 season is considered a big step for the NFL. After all, attendance in games had climbed over 14% in 1938, more than the previous season's totals of tickets sold. Now, Joe Carr was a big part of that. That's why he got that 10-year contract. Fortunately, he did not have the opportunity to fulfill his duties for those 10 years or even a single year from his untimely passing of a sudden heart attack in May of that year. But according to Wikipedia, the most significant draw was the home games of the New York Giants, who averaged just shy of 39,000 fans per home game. Pretty big numbers for that time for pro football. On the opposite end of the spectrum, the Pittsburgh Pirates, as they were called at the time, averaged less than 12,000 fans per contest at their home venue in the Steel City in 1939. Now, the season had some really close divisional races, some of the closest that had been known to football that far. It was divided, remember, into the Western and the Eastern divisions. There was a 10-team league, 5 in each league division. The Western Division title and the Eastern title came down to the last 2 weeks of the season before being decided. The West was determined in a matchup of Green Bay and Detroit, who were the divisional leaders with 2 weeks to go. The Pack was trailing the Lions in the second half, and a win by Detroit would force a divisional playoff between the two clubs at a later date. Now, Green Bay avoided this extra game by Hall of Fame back Clark Hinkle scoring a late fourth quarter go-ahead touchdown to provide a 12-7 victory for the Packers and to propel them into the NFL title game with one more game to play for each team to play. But they had secured it that way by beating Detroit. Now, the Eastern Division was even closer than the West, and it went into the final weekend of the regular season, as the New York Giants and the Washington Redskins were dead even at 8-1-1 records. Their only head-to-head meeting prior to this final game of the season was the scoreless tie earlier, and Washington scored the game's only touchdown in this finale, but they ended up losing the game 9-7 on 3 New York Football Giants field goals. What a way to lose that. So the Giants and the Packers would advance into the NFL championship game, but that game was a little bit less competitive than the games we just talked about in the second to last and last week of the season to get the nomination to go and have the right to play for the National Football League title. Green Bay trounced the visiting New Yorkers in Wisconsin by the score of 27-0 to win another NFL crown. On the individual side, the Philadelphia Eagles rookie quarterback Davey O'Brien led all NFL passers with 13,024 yards in rushing. Bill Osmaski of the Chicago Bears rumbled 699 yards to lead all ball carriers, and Green Bay's Don Hutson dominated the receiving honors with 846 yards received in the air. And that is the 1939 National Football League season. We had the loss of Joe Carr. We had some rules changes, some great divisional races that really made the end of the season quite interesting. Unfortunately, a poor one-sided title game. But the next year, it gets into the war years, and things start to really change in football, not only from a manpower issue, but from rules and development and formation, as we will start to see in our next few episodes of the Football History Rewind. Check us out here in the next few weeks. But before that, we have some great posts that we're going to be putting up on Pigskin Dispatch, which we do daily. And we have a couple other Pigskin Dispatch podcasts coming out before the next Football History Rewind installment. So make sure you check those out. And until next time, have a great Gridiron Day. Peeking up at the clock, the time's running down. We're going to go into victory formation, take a knee, and let this baby run out. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back tomorrow for the next podcast. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. A special thanks to the talents of Mike and Jean Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Have you ever noticed that the lower jaw is not protected in sports? Did you know that 10,800 concussions will happen today? This has been an upward trend for the past 50 years. I'm Dr. Michael Hutchison, a practicing neuromuscular dentist. When my son wanted to participate in football and rugby, I was afraid he was going to get a concussion. That fear led me to finding the missing link to reducing concussions. The fact is, the only part of the skull that is not protected in sports is the lower jaw. If you want to drastically reduce concussions, there are 3 basic jaw positions that affect concussions, and 2 of them are not good. The correct one is called physiologic jaw position. It will dissipate the force away from the brain. Knowing that, I designed an appliance that put my son's jaw in the right place, and as a result, he was concussion-free from 5th grade all the way to senior year. This jaw position takes those 10,800 concussions today down to 28. It's the key to concussion protection. As a parent, this is what you need to know. It's extremely important that the device you are using is on the lower jaw. Thickness of the device is important. Most importantly, it must position and hold you in your own unique personal physiologic jaw position. So if your child goes out on the field with the correct jaw position, your son or daughter will not one of those 10,800 concussions today. Get yours today at powerplusmouthguard.com. Use the promo code POWERUP2023 for 10% off.